Another logic question, another just like dive in. If something fits nicely in the blank, great. If not, we'll deal with the answer choices. In 2016, biological anthropologist Heather F. Smith and her team investigated the evolution of the appendix, an intestinal organ that is present in some mammals, including humans, but is generally thought to have no function. Okay, so no function seems maybe important. Studying 533 mammal species, the team found that the appendix has emerged independently across multiple lineages, so came about a lot of times, in separate instances. Okay, so notice how they repeat that same idea, and significantly hasn't disappeared after emerging in specific lineages. So it says significantly, it hasn't disappeared, okay. Moreover, the team determined that species with the organ tend to have higher concentrations of lymphoid tissue, which supports immune responses in the cecum, the organ the appendix is attached to. Therefore, they hypothesized that the appendix likely, I don't know, good for immunity. Right? So you notice how complicated their way of talking was and how simple mine is, right? Like, it supports immune response, so fine, it's good for immunity. Maybe it's more about the other things. I don't know. Let's just look at it. Which choice most logically completes the text? A, it was the appendix likely was once present in many non-mammal species, but has since disappeared from those lineages. Okay, first of all, it has nothing to do with the immunity, which seems important. Second of all, why are we talking about non-mammal species? We're talking about mammals throughout the whole thing. And they also said that even in mammals, it didn't disappear. So 3 strikes and you're out. B, it has been preserved in certain mammal species because it benefits their immune system. It's like the same thing I wrote. It's probably that. C, it will emerge in a greater number of mammal species because it may serve a necessary function in the immune system. Let's leave that for a sec. D, produced higher concentrations of lymphoid tissue in mammals in the past than it does currently. Well, this is a time issue. So are we talking about things happening in the past, the present, the future, right? So choice C also has a little bit of a future thing going on. So I don't think so. It's just a statement about what it does or what we think it does. So they're not making a comparison over time either. So I think what they're hoping happens here is that you're looking at this very science-heavy phrase, and you're like, oh, that seems important. I don't understand it, but it seems important, so we better mention it. No, don't do that. Don't fall for a copy-paste trap. That's what D is they're hoping you see that very specific phrase, and it's in the choice, it's in the passage, and you're like, gotta be right. But no, this is doing something that the passage isn't doing, right? We're not talking about what happened in the past to this thing. We're saying it didn't disappear. Maybe that means that because it was really useful back then and now it has no function. I don't know. It doesn't get into that. So I'm not allowed to do that either. So the reason some people are going to pick C is because it feels like a more specific conclusion, right? It feels like, oh, B is saying kind of what they've already said, but we want to continue the story, right? We want to come with what's the next chapter? What's the next thing they're going to say? And C could be that, right? We don't know what's happening in the future, but we could predict that it will emerge in a greater number of species because it has this benefit to the immune system. So in a dumb way, it does hit our dumb summary, right? It hits that same idea. But in a more big picture SAT way, right? If we have 2 answer choices and they're both similar, we'll go with the weaker answer. Go with the one that says less. And so that's B. And if you picked C here, this is a good example where your habit of what you're like looking for in the choices is wrong. You think, for various reasons, probably related to other tests that you've taken, that more specific answers are better. More detailed summaries are better. No, not on the SAT. The weaker it is, the less information it has, the better. So you need to get in that habit of thinking of choices that way. Because when I saw C, I was like, oh, this is definitely wrong because it went too far. And yeah, it's logical that maybe if an appendix is good for your immunity, that eventually over millions of years, more things would evolve appendixes. That's not impossible, but good Lord, that is a crazy thing to assume just based on this like one paragraph about like, well, we think it helps the lymphoids. I don't know. Like to make predictions about the future of evolution is very, very bold. But B is barely saying anything at all. It's basically just repeating what it says, right? Why do we have appendixes? Because they're good for immunity. So there you go. That's what B says. And this is how a lot of these logic questions are going to go, especially in the first module, is you're just repeating an idea that's there. So keep it simple. Don't tell some weird fantastical story. Just as much as possible, if you have to choose, stick with the answer that is just closest to what they say in the passage.